Okay, so now we were talking about multitasking, and you mentioned that. What did you want to say about that?
Well, like, for instance, my husband can never do more than one thing at a time. If he is focused on one thing, I can't even talk to him.
That's totally typical of men, by the way. And that's an inferiority to women.
Meanwhile, I can, have something in the oven and...
Up to how many tasks can you do? You're going to say grab the kid and change the... 4? 5?
4 or 5?
That's, again, brain wiring. And women are wired to be better than men at multitasking, to actually do more than one thing at a time. That's actually very interesting, because they did this experiment on a BBC documentary where they put headphones on both males and females, and they'd have two different people speak two different words that were very similar but different. Like, for example, March and Mark in both ears. And the men would only hear with one ear at a time. Biologically, we can't hear with both ears at the same time. The women would always hear both words. That's an example of something. Again, where are we going with that? We'll look at it in a minute. But the idea of just having the ability, having different abilities. I'm trying to say that even biology testifies the fact that لَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. The male is not like the female. We are different. We're better than each other at respective things.
But just to bring up another point, Wise, there are still women CEOs out there. There's women who aren't just in administrative tasks. There's women who aren't very good as housewives, and men who are probably, maybe even a little bit better doing the housework. Not in all cases, but in some cases. And there's some cases where women may be better in a field of work such as marketing than their husband. And marketing is still a very, very competitive.
I agree with you, but I'd say two things to that. You seem to feel administrative tasks are inferior. You still think so. In the tone of your question, you just implied that the administrative tasks were inferior.
Unfortunately, that is the way it's looked at, isn't it?
But now, is that the way it really is, or the way men have made it seem like because they don't enjoy it?
That's true.
You see?
That's true.
So ultimately, and another question to you, what percent of women are CEOs, honestly?
I wouldn't know, but I would assume a lot less than men. That's true.
Much less, and surgeons and engineers. They just don't like that. It has to do with brain wiring. Certain things, it's not nothing to be frowned upon. Spatial direction, ability. What's the other name of the book you were mentioning in the break? I said
Why Men Can't Read Maps?
No, women can't read maps.
Why women, can't read maps, and men don't listen. I think that was it.
Exactly, I think so. And again, not all men, not all women, but we're talking about a bell curve here. That was my other point, commenting on your comment. But again, those who can't read maps, whether it's a male but predominantly female, what is it? It's not their fault. There's actually a part in the brain it's a wiring that allows you to understand or not understand spatial directions, to hold up an object and rotate it in space. They do those in IQ tests. Men tend to be better at that. That's why they don't get frustrated with maps. The example in one of these books was that a woman would turn the map around to try to make sure that it's in direction of...
I do that.
And I don't do that. Do you know what I mean? I can actually see the map going this way and know that we're going that way. And then it was interesting because there was an argument between a man and his wife about this. And he was saying, don't turn around. She said, but I have to. It's more logical to her. And he said, well, if it was more logical, why is the printing upside down? But then again, it is upside down because men probably made that map.
Exactly.
You see what I mean? And so we're just better at respective things. And I totally understand where Dara is going. And I'm going to be very honest here. Not like I haven't been honest before, but I just want to be even more honest, inshallah. And I understand the fear that exists out there, which could make you subconsciously feel that the things that men say women are better at are inferior things still, but that's just a male thing. That's the male glory, trying to make it seem that whatever he's not good at is not a good thing to be good at. Do you know what I mean? And that's exactly, if you were to ask me, before you go on, Melinda, if you were to ask me, before I became I can't say a feminist in the modern sense, but maybe in the postmodern sense, where feminists are realizing that feminism is to truly empower a woman to make her own choices, not to force her to be like men.
Which is what you're taught when you're brought up in Western culture.
Right. Well, ultimately, if you truly empower a woman to truly be free and truly make her own choices, that's the epitome of adl, of justice. But to make her choices without any outward male prejudice or subconscious male prejudice that wants her to look a certain way, that tells her that without a certain appearance she has no value, that tells her it's all... we do that to women. We do that to women. But Melinda, you wanted to say something, and I'll get back to this.
Along exactly these lines, that what my grandma taught me, who was really a true feminist, is that you don't have to be like a man to be equal to a man.
Exactly.
What I'm thinking is the way in Western societies, how if you choose, going back to the true feminism thing,
Right.
to do the thing that the man doesn't do, as you were saying, and choose to be a housewife, even though you may have a Harvard education, you may be a lawyer, you may be successful, if you make the conscious decision to stay at home with your kids, you're looked down upon by society. And that's very degrading because, I mean, I'm sure this is such a cliched expression, but being a mom is a full-time job.
Isn't it?
It
and
is.
if you really knew the
It's a
effect,
double-time job.
it is a double-time job.
It's a 24/7 job.
It's a real. I mean, I don't work. I do work. Who the heck said I don't work? That's all I do. I want a vacation. You know what I mean? But you should start working. I should stop working. That's what real women who really take care of their children say. It's just like, I know, because see, I mean, it's not just the whole breast milk versus pumped, breast milk, like true breastfeeding, or just, pumping
Formula.
and formula, or just either both of those, where you either.
It's the point that I've been thinking about getting a job, but the only thing I can think about is, if I'm working, who's going to take my son to school?
And you feel that you want to do it yourself because of a certain psychological element?
I have to.
Why? Why do you feel like you have to?
Because nobody else can do it the way I can.
Oh, see? So she feels, as a mother, she feels the special role she has that she'd be forfeiting and choosing a less important thing, a less priority over that priority. But that's only when you recognize that it's not just milk or formula, it's not just somebody taking to school, it's you taking him to school. There's trauma, there's subconscious trauma, there are things that happen to the children when mothers are not around. And I think that if you truly want to affect the world, bring up the children. I mean, you are, to me, I think women are the most effective gender, you know what I mean, in the world, because they are half the world physically, but then they bring up the other half.
There's a verse of Arabic poetry which says, if you teach a woman, it's as if you've taught all of humanity.
Absolutely. And having, completely recognized that exact notion, that how effective women are. I really think that what it's about, I mean, if there's anything I'd like to say, we'd like to say in this episode, it's that the men should start respecting women. Women are better than them at a lot of things, right? And they should stop having this false sense of superiority. Women, as you put it, should actually start feeling that they have their own separate feminine identity that's not an outwardly feminine, but actually living according to male standards. I think those are two important messages here.
And and then also vice versa wise. I mean, it's also the concept that men, you can't separate it as in women are the household and the multitasking whatever, and men should do this, and that's separate, because we have examples of the Prophet ﷺ. There's a hadith which says he would come to his home, and what he'd see his family doing, so if his wife is doing the dishes, he'd go in and do the dishes. He'd do whatever they were doing.
He even fixed his own shoes.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Exactly. So it's not like, well, you can do that, so do it. You know what I mean? It's more like, you have an edge in case I'm busy doing something else, but at the same time I recognize, well, those are very humbling things if you think about it. And Islam is about humility. It's actually male ego that prevents them from doing a lot of these things. And I mean, we could honestly, we could just go on. And I think that ultimately we're going to have another episode, whether it's the one that airs after this or another one in this series, but to carry on, hopefully with both Dara and Melinda again, because there's a lot more that needs to be said. We have to close this episode now, but if there's one thing I'd like to say to remind myself and everybody watching, would be that the Muslim is in the world to purify the nafs. The human being is in the world to purify the nafs. The Muslim believes that and accepts that and submits to God and wants to become a pure person so that you can have a pure heart. It's all about having all our actions, the hunting, the eating, the maps, the CEOs, all these things are about having a pure heart. إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. On that day, neither wealth nor children shall avail the human being, meaning the day of judgment, except those who bring to God a sound heart. And listen to this, the Prophet ﷺ says women have a sound heart. They have a heart, well, they have more tender hearts. So they have hearts that are more inclined to being sound. So women have a spiritual head start. And it is only because of that that males seem to superficially have, to balance it out, a physical head start in the world, whether it's the rationale you're talking about, or all these CEO, which means leader, all these, that means being a leader in the physical world. And a true submitter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to be a leader in the spiritual world. May Allah make the men like women who have acknowledged that and become spiritual leaders by nature. May Allah give men the degree of fitrah and of primordial norm that women have by nature. May Allah allow us to be less egotistical as men and more about cooperation and not about competition where it's ego, cooperation where it's actually spirit. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open up our eyes and remove any oppression and any of these misconceptions in the name of Islam. from the hearts of Muslims and the actions of both Muslim men and women, and allow us to enjoy our separate identities so that we complement and complete one another as opposed to have this competition. And I could go on and on, but we are out of time, so we'll see you again in the episode of Stairway to Paradise, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.